Good morning. My name is Edris Harrell, and on behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, I welcome those of you in the sanctuary and those of you online. If you are a visitor here in the sanctuary, please join us after the service back in the parish hall so we can meet you and answer any questions you might have about First U. All who are in a search for their spiritual truth, whatever that might be, and for those who already found their truth, are welcome here. We are a welcoming congregation, which means that you are welcome here regardless of your identity and with whom you share your love, because love is the most important thing. With this being December, I have a number of announcements to share. This afternoon at 4:30 in the field next to the church, we will have a winter solstice celebration with a bonfire, followed by a soup dinner in the parish hall. You are welcome to bring your favorite soup or just your appetite. Next Saturday is Christmas Eve. At 7 p.m., we will have an intergenerational celebration of the universal meaning of Christmas, which will include carols sung by the adult and children choirs. But be sure to get here at 6:40 to enjoy selections from Vivaldi's Gloria, when the choir will be joined by guest soloists and musicians. The service will be in person and live streamed. Christmas morning, we will have an online-only service featuring readings by Howard Thurman, a prominent religious leader, and Christmas spirituals. Despite all the events to come, we'll now turn our attention to today's service. This morning, Reverend Larry will share some thoughts on what the winter solstice might mean for us. And now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Thank you, Aaron Walker, who will be playing the drums during our service. Really appreciate that. I'm the Reverend Larry Piers, minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. Before the sounds of those drum beats totally escape us, let them remind us of all the individual hearts in this room. You may even take your hand and put your hand on your heart and feel the beat of your heart as if it were a drum, adding to the music of our gathering together. And let us recognize that we are many hearts gathered as one heart this morning. You may put your other hand over the hand of your heart and feel the heartbeat of this community as we gather together in our joys and our sorrows, as we gather together to be present to one another and to be part of the presence of love and compassion in this world. This morning, I have to announce the passing of two members of our congregation. And is our custom, I will light a votive candle to honor their life and to remember them. Some of you may know Eric Olson, who was a member of this congregation for 45 years. Some of you may know him in your connection with his work at DuPont during some era of your own life. And so, in honor of Eric Olson, I light this candle. Information about his memorial service will come out this week in the e-newsletter. And I also have to announce the passing of Bob Ulrich. And June, who is here, his loving partner, may you feel surrounded by our love, by our care for you, and a care for your love of Bob. We wish for you that those memories still glow strongly and warmly in your own heart and spirit, and that you may feel an embrace of this community during this time. So Bob was very close to his 102nd birthday coming up. So a lot of years lived. And so in honor of Bob's life and so that we remember him, I light this candle. Wintering brings about some of the most profound and insightful moments of our human experience. And this morning we're going to reflect on wintering as not just a season, but as a process within our own lives. There is wisdom that resides in those who have wintered.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it as I read these words by Reverend D.C. Fortune. We light this chalice as a symbol of our free faith. We light this chalice to remember the miracle of the oil that burned for 8 days. We light this chalice to mark the nights of midwinter. We light this chalice as we wait for the sun to return. Faith Whittington will now come and lead us in calling the directions in recognition of the winter solstice.
Good morning, everyone. I have written these directional calls for today's service inspired by calls written by Ellen Cannon Reed, a noted Wiccan out of the Pacific Northwest. For those of you at home who would like to stand as you are able and join us, and face the direction with those of us here at the church and don't quite know which direction is east. Just face in the direction that you believe is close to where the sun comes up relative to where you are in your home, and that will be good enough. I invite those in the sanctuary to stand as they are able and willing and face the back of the church, which is the direction of east. And we begin. Take a deep breath and slowly release it. I invite you to tune into the feel of the air moving into and out of your lungs. Connect to the element of air. We honor the direction of east and the element of air.
Now, turn to your right and face the direction of south. I invite you to tune into the beating of your heart. Feel it in your chest. Connect into the good-heartedness and brave-heartedness that fires you up. We honor the direction of south and the element of fire.
Now turn to the right and face the front of the church. The direction of west. I invite you to tune into the water that makes up the blood that flows through your veins. Feel the blood circulating and connect to that flow through our bodies, which are made up of 70% water. We honor the West and the element of water.
We now turn to your right and face the direction of north. I invite you to feel the sturdy framework of your skeleton. Connect to your bones as the stones of the earth in your body, sturdy and strong. We honor the direction of north and the element of earth.
Now return to your seats or stand facing forward as you wish. I invite you to turn your awareness inside to your center. As you turn inward, connect to your spirit, whether you consider it a spark of the divine that resides inside you or the spark of your personality. Tune into the spark of that which makes you, you. We honor our center and we honor our spirit. And now, with the energies aligned with the elemental energies, we are ready to honor the longest night of the year, the winter solstice.
Thank you. Please now join us in singing hymn number 163 for the Earth Forever Turning. I invite you to stand again in body or spirit. Please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Please join me now in a time of prayerful meditation, which I'm drawing from an earth prayer written by Nancy Wood. Feel your feet upon the ground. Feel the earth caressing your feet. Feel the steadiness and the strength and the grounding that the earth gives to us. Recognize the changes of the seasons around us and the seasons within us. And Nancy's words are, "Earth, teach me stillness. as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering, as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility, as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring, as the mother who secures her young. Earth, teach me courage, as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation, as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom, as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation, as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration, as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as the dry fields weep with rain. So feeling again the sensation of the earth beneath our feet, let's enter now a time of shared silence. So much happens between each time that we gather from Sunday to Sunday. So much happens in our own lives, in the lives of those we love, and in this world that we share. We take a time every Sunday to bring our attention to whatever it is that we're carrying with us into this service. What losses, what griefs, what joys, what concerns, what sorrows we might have. And so let's take a moment now to attend to whatever it is that we're carrying in our heart. So that you need not carry any of these concerns or joys alone. We invite you, if you so choose, to first speak your concerns, the things that are heavy on your heart today, and speak them into this room or write them in the chat if you so desire. So what are the concerns? What are the sorrows that you are holding on this day? let's feel the weight of whatever it is that we are holding, and let's feel it held by others in this room as well. What are the joys that you have this morning? What are the joys that are singing in your heart? What are the joys that are luring you forward each day? Yes. Yeah. So in life, we weave both sorrow and joy into all that is our life. May all whose names were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day.
Thank you, Erin. This reading is by Katherine May, entitled Wintering, the Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. A surprising cluster of novels and fairy tales are set in the snow. Our knowledge of winter is a fragment of childhood, almost innate. All the careful preparations that animals make to endure the cold, foodless months, hibernation and migration, deciduous trees dropping leaves. This is no accident. The changes that take place in winter are a kind of alchemy, an enchantment performed by ordinary creatures to survive. Dormice laying on fat to hibernate, swallows navigating to South Africa, trees blazing out the final weeks of autumn. It is all very well to survive the abundant months of spring and summer, but in winter, we witness the full glory of nature's flourishing in lean times. Plants and animals don't fight the winter. They don't pretend it's not happening and attempt to carry on living the same lives they've lived in the summer. They prepare. They adapt. They perform extraordinary acts of metamorphosis to get them through. Wintering is a time of withdrawing from the world, maximizing scant resources, carrying out acts of brutal efficiency, and vanishing from sight. But that's where the transformation occurs. Winter is not the death of the life cycle, but its crucible. It's a time for reflection and recuperation, for slow replenishment, for putting your house in order. Doing these deeply unfashionable things, slowing down, letting your spare time expand, getting enough sleep, resting, is a radical act now, but it's essential.
Someone pointed out to me that the title of my sermon today, The Replenishment of Wintering, seemed very hard to comprehend. I agree. But you're here, so let's proceed. You probably already are beginning to understand now that the word wintering, although related to the season of winter, refers more to a process that we can attend to in our lives, no matter what season of nature we are in or what season of our life we are in. I would say that the process of wintering may be essential to our own personal and spiritual and collective growth. So I will be drawing on some insights from Katherine May's book, Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times, which I know some in our congregation have read. May offers this perspective. Wintering is a time for reflection and recuperation, for slow replenishment. I like that phrase, slow replenishment. Let's say it together at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Slow replenishment. I love that. For putting the house in order and doing these deeply unfashionable things, slowing down, letting your spare time expand, getting enough sleep and resting. It is a radical act for sure, but it is also essential. In other words, wintering, although more pronounced in the actual season of winter, includes practices not contained only in the winter months. So in our culture, we often lose track of the cyclical, seasonal aspects of life and the interior work that each season invites us into. Those who grew up in the Christian tradition know that the seasons of the church year are designated by certain liturgical colors and particular practices. Those of us who grew up in the Jewish tradition also have this sense of seasons with reflective periods leading up to each significant holiday, like the counting of the Omer before Rosh Hashanah. Some of the pagan or earth-centered traditions have centered origins of some of the Jewish and Christian seasons often elude us in our more industrial, less agricultural, more civilized world. The activist for social and environmental justice, Rabbi Arthur Waskow, in his book Seasons of Our Joy, makes the connection between the ancient agricultural seasons and how they relate in particular to the holidays and festivals of the Jewish tradition. Many of our Christian holidays incorporate practices from these earth-centered celebrations. Some say that this was a way for Christians to convert the pagans to Christian religions. Others say it's because Christians did not want to lose all the fun and the earth connection that they experienced in these pagan celebrations. So they carried them into Christianity. Whatever religious tradition we're part of, it's important for us to recognize that within each of these traditions, each of these seasons, they were not just a natural phenomenon. Each season also invites us into a particular kind of inner work as well. Parker Palmer offers this critique of our contemporary view of time and seasons. He writes, "The master metaphor of our era does not come from agriculture. It comes from manufacturing. We do not believe that we grow our lives. We believe that we make them. Just listen to how we use the word in everyday speech. We make time. We make friends. We make meaning. We make money. We make a living. We make love. From an earlier age, he continues, we absorb our culture's arrogant conviction that we manufacture everything, reducing the world to mere raw material that lacks all the value until we impose our designs and labor on it. If we accept the notion that our lives are dependent upon an inexorable cycle of seasons, on a play of powers that we can conspire but never control, he says we run headlong into a culture which insists against all evidence that we can make whatever kind of life we want, whenever we want it. Deeper still, he says, we run headlong into our own egos, which want desperately to believe that we are always in charge. The winter months, with its cold and its damp, lead us to a certain kind of humility with the earth. And perhaps you know the root of the word humility is humus, of the earth. It's a humility that we might not otherwise experience unless we allow ourselves to experience what the earth teaches us, what the seasons remind us of. Indeed, the winter months provide us with this opportunity to not only go physically inside, but also to actually attend to our inner self, to our inner landscape, and our own rhythms as well. Perhaps on this winter solstice, we might dedicate ourselves to entering into this cyclical understanding of life and time and appreciate more deeply the process of wintering, with not the point of getting through winter, but to entering winter. For the sake not just of winter, but for the sake of honing the practices that will allow us to join the ongoing unfolding of our own lives. So I want to hold up at least 3 practices: hunkering down, hibernating, and huddling. Let's repeat those. Hunkering down, hibernating, huddling. So these are not May's terminology, Katherine May's terminology, but I thought I would provide this alliteration so that we'll remember them. And I will use this 3-part framework as a way to weave some of May's insights into them. So first, the practice of hunkering down. When I think of hunkering down, I think of whatever we may have to do to prepare our space, our living spaces, our working spaces for being able to do wintering. Practically, it may mean we gather the supplies that we need: food, firewood, fuel, antifreeze, etc. And all of these gives us the comfort that we desire as we prepare for winter. Hunkering down to do the inner work of wintering may also mean creating a particular corner or corners in our homes for reading a good book, for reclining and staying warm, for writing in our journals, for meditating or praying, a designated space or a space that can support our practice of hunkering down. Katherine May shares her own experience of praying that may resonate with some of us. First, she quotes J. Griffith's response to the question, "Do you pray?" And Griffiths responds, "Yes. I pray earthwise rather than to any off-ground God, and though I cannot tell you the words that I use, I will tell you that at their core is beauty." May admits that she probably prays in this earthwise fashion as well. She writes, by closing my eyes, however briefly, and resting my thoughts on the core of my perception, I can gain some of the peace that meditation brings me. I've come to think of it as prayer, although I ask for nothing and speak to no one. It's a profoundly nonverbal experience, a sharp breath, a pure being amidst a forest of words. It's an untangling, a moment to feel the true ache of desire, the gentle wash of self-compassion, the heart swell of thanks, and the tick, tick, tick of existence. These verses from the poem by Carol Ann Duffy point to us to something that is not that we pray, but that prayer may also, not just that we may pray, but that prayer may pray us. It's entitled Prayer. We may find something uttering within us every now and then, stilling within us or reconnecting us to our past, our present, and our future in a seamless moment. Here are some of the verses from Carol Ann Duffy's poem, The Prayer. Some days, although we cannot pray, a prayer utters itself, so a woman will lift her head from the sieve of her hands and stare at the minims sung by a tree, a sudden gift. Some nights, although we are faithless, the truth enters our hearts, and that small, familiar pain. Then a man will stand stock still, hearing his youth in the distant Latin chanting of a train. So finding a place for that stilling, for that praying, for that meditating is one way of hunkering down and wintering. And some of you may want to hunker down with a book that helps you along and helps you find that place of stillness and resonant awareness. It could be a book that you take the whole winter to read contemplatively. Krista Tippett recently offered the practice of contemplative reading, where she says, as you read, have a journal alongside of you and write down the quotes that you want to linger with just a little while longer. Capture the images or your own thoughts or reflection as you go along. It takes a while to read a book that way. I don't recommend it if you're preparing for a sermon, but it might be a way to be with the book and to be with it contemplatively. Or perhaps you might find what is called a day book that is already divided into a page or two that you read each day with a question or so to reflect upon it. There's one such book entitled A Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo. He's a philosopher, a poet, and a cancer survivor. He created this day book that he says to provide a sturdy container for small doses of what matters. Taking time to hunker down, I believe, will help us in our own individual and spiritual lives, as well as our collective life as a congregation, to grow our souls. May writes that more than any other season, winter requires a kind of metronome that ticks away its darkest beats, giving it a melody to follow into spring. The year will move on no matter what, but paying attention to it, feeling its beat, and noticing the moments of transition, perhaps even taking time to think about what we want from the next phase in the new year, we can get the measure of it. Okay, there were 3 H's, right? First one was hunkering down. The second was hibernate. Good, you're a quick study. So Katherine May has a chapter entitled Slumber. And in it, she explores some of the ways that many animals have hibernation periods. It was included in what Idris read to us today. She reflects upon her own struggle with sleep and how she has nights where she encounters what she calls the terrible threes, waking up at 3 a.m., the middle of the night, and only gradually finding her way back to sleep. Over time, she recognizes that rather than fight that time, she can enter into that time and recognize that there was a time in history where indeed people had sleep that was divided into a first sleep and a second sleep, and in between those, around the 3 o'clock hour or so, was the watch time. We've lost that, some of us. We feel like we have to get ourselves back to sleep rather than embrace that. Katherine May writes, there's not enough night left for us. We have lost our true instincts for darkness, its invitation to spend some time in the proximity of our dreams. Sleep is not a dead space, but a doorway to a different kind of consciousness, one that is reflective and restorative, full of tangential thought and unexpected insights. In winter, we are invited into a particular mode of sleep, not a regimented 8 hours, but a slow ambulatory process in which waking thoughts merge with dreams and space is made in the blackest hours to repair the fragmented narratives of our lives. Have you heard about the nap bishop? Yes? Anybody heard about the nap bishop? Let me tell you about her. Her name is Terry Hersey, and she has devoted her ministry to the importance of rest. This came to her out of her own struggles during seminary when she noticed that as she was trying to read a book, she would fall asleep on the couch. She noticed that her grades suffered as she tried to keep going. Her health flagged, that something had to give. So she decided to allow herself a few moments, more moments for rest. And then she would wake up feeling renewed. She began to build moments of respite into her days, no matter how busy, napping wherever and whenever she could, in bed, on the sofa, on benches, in between classes. She'd had enough of the grind, so she slept or emptied her head with something that felt like rest. A long bath, meditating on the train, deliberate daydreaming. This proved pivotal because she felt better. Her grades improved, actually. And it's as if she recognized that a new devotion. She was determined to commit to this napping, and in the process, to push back on what she, a black woman, saw as a legacy of forced labor and exhaustion that her ancestors had endured. She writes, I was exhausted, physically, mentally, spiritually, and I just didn't see any other way to take a radical leap and say, I don't care, let the chips fall where they may. So this epiphany happened for her about 10 years ago, and in the intervening years, she's turned her personal transformation of napping into a movement. Thus, Nap Ministry was born. I'm feeling a calling to this ministry. She anointed herself as the Nap Bishop. She urges her followers to use time that they might otherwise devote to extra work to sleeping instead. The stretches that they'd spend staring at a screen, staring into space, these moments, to turn those into restful moments of napping. She says that this is a movement because it's about collectively refusing to run ourselves into the ground. Now, I can imagine myself becoming a disciple of the Nap Bishop. Anyone else feel the call? Okay, great. Okay. It will require the spiritual discipline, those of you who want to join me in this movement, require the spiritual discipline of listening to our bodies and to recognize that there is a wisdom there. It will require recognizing how we can provide more rest for ourselves in a culture that seems relentless. It will require us to be willing to see rest as resistance, which is the title of Terry Hersey's book. She says, yes, it's about literal naps, but it's also about imagination work, justice work. It's about education. We need to understand what the systems are doing to us so that we can resist in a way that is fruitful for us. I notice some of you are practicing that nap ministry right now. I'm inspired by her work since it's really kind of an intersection between the personal, the physical, the emotional, and the collective or social transformation. Now, I guess it's really fortunate that our software that writes the messages on our sign on 202 is password protected, because I could imagine that you could drive by one day on 202, Route 202, and notice I have borrowed one of Terry Hersey's ideas. Our sign could say, join us on Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. for our nap temple. So, although there's inner work available to us during winter, it does not have to be totally interior. In fact, the interior work we do may allow us to be with each other in more available ways. Remember, I proposed that the wintering process can include for us these 3 H's, right? The first, hunker down. Second, and the third one is huddle. Right, it's easy to remember. It rhymes with cuddle. Sometimes we need to provide wintering time for someone else. Sometimes we need to be attentive to someone else's need for wintering and join them in that process. May had a very painful recognition as she realized that she needed some wintering time. Her son needed some wintering time. When he talked about how unhappy and her young son and tortured he was in school. She was in between jobs, so she did a period of homeschooling. She writes a little bit about that. The time had come to teach my son to winter. It's quite a skill to pass on. So we took our time and sank into the things we love. We played on the beach and burrowed through the library. We made pirates out of air-drying clay and walked in the woods to bring home pine cones and berries. We took the train up to London and visited the Natural History Museum to see the dinosaurs in relative solitude. She goes on, we traveled through the dark moments together. I won't pretend it was fun, but it was necessary all the same. We raged and grieved together. We were overcome with fear. We worried and slept it off and didn't sleep and let our timetables turn upside down. We didn't so much retreat from the world as to let it recede from us. So, of course, we might, during this winter time, during this wintering time, pass the skill of wintering on to one another. We might find a way to get out of our routine every now and then. I tried to imagine what that could look like. Sure, it could be watching a movie together. It could mean eating by candlelight on a weeknight. not in front of the TV, just for the sake of it. It could be going for a walk together in an unfamiliar but beautiful spot. It could be turning off our electronics a few hours before bed. Or, now let's shudder at this one together. Are you ready? Having a technology-free day, ready to shudder. Whew, boy. So an intentional wintering practice can also include, as it does today, gathering with your congregation for worship, or for small groups, or for one of our winter programs. I had the wonderful opportunity this week to be at Cokesbury with a Soul Matters group as they reflected on the theme of wonder together. You can even begin by joining us for our winter solstice that Edris mentioned today at 4:30. It could be that you gather with others in this darkened sanctuary on the second Wednesday of the month from 6:30 to 7 for Vespers offered by Cindy Cohen and Kathy Harris. Seasons invite us into appreciating the rhythms of nature and within our own life. The point is not to get through winter, but to enter it. And so, if you haven't yet realized it, we're living in a time that is calling us to a collective reset. You know, like a reset button on your phone. Let's put your hands out like this for a moment, everybody. And we're going to, at the count of 3, we're going to hit the cosmic reset button of the universe. 1, 2, 3. So this wintering time can be a time to find that reset button that can help us all. We can no longer depend on the ways that we thought or acted in the past to get us to where we need to go. We need to abandon some of our limiting or narrowing perspectives as we seek a right relationship with the earth, with indigenous wisdom, with those who've been historically marginalized or oppressed. We need to find new strengths within and among us, and this does not happen by wishing it to be so. This does not happen by merely talking about it. No, we need to embody and practice those ways that will prepare us for the great transition that we are in, what some have called the great turning. So may it be. Amen.
Thank you, Kathy. The third UU principle is our focus during the month of December. This is the promise to accept one another and encourage spiritual growth in our congregations. One way we do this for our children at First U is through our Age of Reason and Coming of Age classes. These become a rite of passage for our children, culminating in writing their personal credos and reading them to the congregation at a celebration service. These are some of my favorite services because the children always present a diverse sample of beliefs. We do not have anything quite so formal or celebrated for adults, but First U has had classes to help grown-ups figure out what they believe. Unlike the children who are raised as UUs, many adults first have to shed what they do not believe before they can hold on to what they do believe. And there will likely always be a spectrum of beliefs at First U, but we commit to having all represented and voiced in our sacred space. We also need to commit to sharing our resources, whether that be time, energy, or money, to help First U continue to be that space for diverse beliefs. During the offertory music, there will be a slide describing the 4 ways to give financially to First Unitarian, and we thank you for your generosity. Please join me in dedicating our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives and these, our offerings. Thank you. We will now extinguish the chalice as I read this closing by Andrew Bakula. May you know fully and deeply the blessings of each of your heart seasons. The inward turning of winter, springtime's lush renewal, the effortless steady growth of summer, and autumn's rich harvest. May your passage from season to season be blessed, eased by hands to hold, and by the light of love to guide you on. Please join in singing hymn 235, Deck the Hall with Boughs of Holly.
God, bring our
we will do the benediction, followed by a postlude, some drumming. After that, we'll have a time for fellowship in the parish hall, and I believe there are some cookies that have been provided for us. So you learned it here first, our benediction for today. Put your hands out like this. At the count of 3, we're going to hit the great reset button of the universe together. But it doesn't have to stop here. All through winter, you can keep hitting that button. Are you ready? Yes? Are you ready? Yes. Okay, 1, 2, 3.